Well, welcome everyone. This is Bruce Belzowski. I'm the Managing Director of the Automotive Futures Group here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. I want to welcome you to our 13th annual Inside China Automotive Conference. It's a conference that we've been working on since the early 2000s. It was the first conference that we did as a group. And it's an area that we've seen grow tremendously since the early 2000s. Want to thank everyone for attending today, and also want to thank our speakers in advance for the work that they've been doing to prepare for this conference. I'm going to start out today with a little intro to the conference and some of the logistics of the conference. And also we'll look at some of the sales and production numbers and some issues related to consumers having to do with the automotive industry in China. So, when you look at what's going on in the Automotive Industries Group, as I said, I'm the Managing Director. I'm retired from the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute. And we'll be, our affiliate funding is our main funding source. We have supporting members as well as research partners. Our research focuses on globalization, powertrains, and intelligent transportation systems, and that also leads into IT as well. And we put on 5 annual conferences. We always want to thank our affiliate members. These are the companies that support us and provide us with the funding that we need to put on the conferences. And we really look forward to working with them and talking to them about the things that are important to them. We also are pleased to announce a new affiliate member, Mazda USA, has now joined our group. And we look forward to working with them as well. From our research partners, we have IT organizations. We also have OEMs, government and NGOs, as well as the supply base and the consulting base for the automotive industry. Our main research projects to date are looking at powertrains for our powertrain strategies for the 21st century project, our China New Energy Vehicle project, and looking at new mobility in terms of IT, technology, policy, and innovative business models. Our team of automotive researchers is made up primarily of students. We have seniors, juniors, looking at coming from economics, from business, from engineering, and also from psychology. So we have a variety of students that have been working with us for a number of years, and also our research associate Kara Alkire. She's online today, monitoring the YouTube site. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. Please join our LinkedIn page. Many of you are already connected to us through LinkedIn, but you'll get more information on future events and information that we're putting out 2 to 3 times a week on what's going on in the automotive industry and our take on what's going on. Some of it's promotion for the conferences, but a lot of it is focusing on some of our research. Just recently we did an interview with one of our affiliates, Jeremy Holt from Means Industries, asking him about the work that they're doing in China and some of the risk and rewards of that work. So it's an interesting interview that worthwhile for you checking out. Our next conference is in February 24th. Here we're taking on a quote from the past, never let a crisis go to waste. How will new mobility initiatives in the auto industry and in the public sphere come out of the pandemic? We're holding our April conference open right now. We're trying to decide exactly what we want to talk about. We're thinking about maybe the role of the new role of government with the change in administration, how things may change in the government and its relationship to the automotive industry. And in July, we're doing our 13th annual Powertrain Strategies for the 21st Century Conference. We've got 4 presenters with us today, Chen Fu from Pony AI, Michael Wang from Argonne National Labs, Hangtou Zhu from Didi, and Sanjun Lee from Cornell University. I want to thank all those speakers in advance for joining us today. Sanjun is going to lead us off after I'm done. We'll do a Q&A with him, then followed by Michael and his Q&A. We'll take about a 10-minute break and then come back. I'll give you a little more insight into some of the work that we're doing on our NEV project. And also, and then Hong Tu is going to talk about his work with Didi, and then we'll end up with Chen Fu from Pony AI talking about their autonomous vehicle work, and adjourn at 12:30. We'll have all the attendees, everybody who's registered, will get a link to the presentations. The website will also have the edited version of this presentation video, as well as the presentations from the speakers. Affiliates get that information, but they also get a link to the review of the highlights of the conference that Kara specializes in. All the agenda, the speaker bios, registration lists, sponsorship opportunities, the affiliate information, upcoming events, it's all on our Inside China website. I sent you the link to that along with the live stream link email. The audience questions and the conference feedback is our forms. These links are underneath in the description, underneath the YouTube site that you're looking at right now. Underneath that, there's a description. If you click on more, you see the links for the Q&As. You can also do Q&As from the chat box next to the presentation. Kara will pick those up and send those over to me. But you could, if you want to be more anonymous, you can use the link for the questions that's underneath the live stream. Also have a conference feedback link there. We'll be sending that to you again after the conference to get some more information about how you think things are going in terms of the conference. When you look at what's going on what has gone on and what's going on in the Chinese automotive industry, we really divide the industry into 3 groups. There are the joint venture manufacturers, and these are the groups GAC, BAIC, SAIC, along with their foreign partners. The joint venture companies also have their own brands that they also sell, and then they're the independent domestic manufacturers. And there's one subgroup of Tesla and Honda. Tesla, because they made a deal with the Chinese government when they first set up in China very recently, that they did not need a joint venture partner. And Honda, because the plant, one of the plants that they have is for export only. So these are how we divide up the Chinese automotive industry. So we look at the main joint venture groups, the GAC group with Fiat, Honda, Toyota, and as you can see, all the other major global manufacturers along with their Chinese counterparts. From the domestic brands, these are the main independent domestic brands. They do not have foreign joint ventures, and so these are a little more have to be a little more innovative in terms of how they run their businesses. Some of the companies have actually gone out and purchased global brands such as Geely, who now owns Volvo. And then there's a new wave of emerging independent Chinese EV manufacturers. There's NIO, there's Li Automotive, and Xpeng Motors. And all of these companies are very relatively new on the scene. but we'll have some more to talk about them in the near future. When you look at what has gone on in China in terms of light-duty vehicles and commercial vehicle sales from 2008 to 2019, you can see the tremendous growth that we've been following from the 9 million vehicles that we saw back in 2008 to the 29 million vehicles that topped out in 2017, and what we see a bit of a decrease, of course, in 2018 and 2019, but in terms of growth rate, there's definitely a decrease. But when you look at 25 million vehicles compared to the amount that the U.S. puts out at a good year of about 17 million, you can see that why we're following the Chinese market. If you look at what's going on this year, as you can see, the effects of the pandemic in February and March, but you see some pretty steady recovery from in April through September and October. We've got a bit of a decrease from September to October, but still these are pretty good numbers in terms of our recovery. They will not meet what the numbers that we saw from last year because of the tremendous decrease that took place in February and March, but it will not be as great a decrease as many had expected. Let's take a quick look at what we've been looking at. We look at the different brands. We've looked at the sales in China. We've looked at what's been going on in 2018, 2019, how that's changed over time. We looked at what's going on in 2020. And when you look at the breakdown, the Chinese total vehicle production from 2018 and 2019, it's primarily passenger cars, but also a big chunk of that is light trucks. And what has happened is what you've seen is very similar movement from what's been going on in the rest of the world in terms of especially the compact SUV segment that has been dominating in the U.S., the Europe, and in Asia over the last probably 4 or 5 years. When you look at the top 10 Chinese groups, and here these are all both the independent and the joint venture groups, you can see the SAIC group with its joint ventures with VW and GM leading the way, and the other companies trying to catch up in that respect. We looked at the top in terms of production, and these are in terms of their independent brands. Notice SAIC is at 608,000 in 2019. This is where the Chinese government expected the Chinese manufacturers to learn from their joint venture partners and then start to create their own brands. And so this is where the own brand companies come in. But as you can see, when it comes to their own brands, it's the independent companies that are doing pretty well. But Chang'an in second place to Geely is a joint venture brand. So it's a mixed bag in terms of which companies are actually promoting their own brands. When we look at what's happened since 2015 from the joint venture productions. And now these are companies doing their own brands, not including their joint ventures. You see some significant drops from 2018 to 2019 for BAIC and GAC, and some significant growth from SAIC in this group. But it's Chang'an that has been the leader in this group. From again, there's a joint venture company that is selling its own brands. When you look at the foreign brand joint venture production, it's VW and GM as the leaders. GM took a bit of a hit from 2018 to 2019. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of 2020. We're expecting lower sales in general in 2020 in China, but maybe not as I said, not as deep as we once thought. We saw some increases from Toyota and some some decreases from Ford. When you look at what's been going on over the last 4 or 5 years, we see that, of course, as I said, the decrease from GM from 2018 to 2019, some significant increases from the Japanese entries of Honda, Toyota, and Nissan. Some growth from Mercedes and BMW, and as I said, some decreases from Ford. So when you look at the independent Chinese manufacturers and their vehicle production, we looked at these before with Geely leading the way. And you look at what's been happening to them over a period of time, they've pretty much held up pretty good. There's some fluctuations in some of the manufacturers. There are decreases a little bit over time, but most of them have been pretty steady since 2015. But some significant growth from 2017 through 2019 from Geely. And when you look at the number of models, and here you're looking at the independent companies. If you look at the first number that you see on above every bar, it tells you the number of models for, in the dark colors, it's the passenger cars, sedans and hatchbacks, and the light gray bars are the SUVs, MPVs, microvans, and the pickups. And you can see where the growth is in terms of the number of models that companies are putting out. Significant numbers of SUVs that have been put out by the independent companies over the passenger car companies, over the passenger car models. When you look at the joint venture brands, again, they're also focusing on the SUV models, especially when you look at SAIC. So they're really seeing this as a real opportunity in terms of what consumers are demanding. And also from the independent companies, just for 2019, you can see the growth in SUVs and pickups. SUVs and MPVs, probably not as many pickups in China as we have in the US. And from the domestic brands, same thing, just from the 2019 number of models, having the focus being on SUVs. So let's look at some market insights. Here you look at what's been happening from this is a chart that looks at 2019 through 2020, January 2020 and February 2020, where you see the big hit from in sales from the retail growth rate from January to February, but you also see the sales leads, and these are people who are considering buying vehicles. That there is still people who are considering buying vehicles, even though the growth rate and the sales, monthly sales, were down. When they looked at customer preferences, one of the big issues was reducing the chance of contracting COVID. That became one of the main reasons for buying cars during the pandemic. This is something that came uniquely out of China, that the vehicles being seen as kind of a cocoon of and protection from the virus. And also there's an interesting point of families demanding to go out because they have been quarantined or things have been held up, so they were unable to get out. When you look at the types of vehicles and what consumers really want from their vehicles, it's still product is excellent enough to meet customers' needs as one of the main things, as well as service that is considerate of customers are two of the main areas that they're still looking at when they're considering buying vehicles. And when you look at what's happened in January to February of this year, something that we've seen in many other situations, in particular when we're looking at recessions, it's usually luxury brands that actually survive better than the than the other types of vehicles. So we're not surprised to see that luxury actually went up a little bit from January to February compared to the mass market brands. And finally, when we look at the what are some major software functions that facilitated customers' purchasing behavior, one of the big issues was having a built-in air purifier. This in particular was one of the things for all customers and also customers who are just considering whose car buying plan was reinforced by the pandemic. And how much are they willing to pay? Well, they're willing to pay about $430 for something like this. So every challenge in the industry usually has something that's some companies are going to come up with ways of trying to maximize their profits. And in China, during the pandemic timeframe, you're really looking at the air purifiers. And when we look at the major services that facilitated customers' purchasing behavior, it's the transparent and favorable financial services, but also for people who are whose car buying plan was reinforced by the pandemic, the issue of having door-to-door test driving, contracting, and delivering services. This is something that we're also seeing in the U.S. today. So that's what what I wanted to talk about today from the first part of my presentation. I'll come back a little after the break to talk about some of the work that we've been doing on NEVs. As is always the case, a link to the presentations will be emailed to you this weekend. Okay, so let's go to our next speaker. First, I should stop sharing. There we go. And we'll go to our first speaker of the day, Sanjun Lee. Sanjun is, let's get you going here and start your video and ask you to unmute. And welcome, Sanjun.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Bruce.
Sanjun is a professor of applied economics and policy, and he holds the Kenneth L. Robertson Chair at the Dyson School of Applied Economics and Management at Cornell University. He also serves as the co-director of the Cornell Institute for China Economic Research and the director of graduate studies at the Dyson School. He received his PhD in economics from Duke University, his master's degree from Michigan State University, and his BA from Nankai University in China. His major research areas include environmental and energy economics, urban and transportation economics, empirical industrial organization, and the Chinese economy. Welcome, Sanjun.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Bruce, for the opportunity to be here. I'm really excited to report some of the studies that we do at Cornell. I'm Sanjun Lee, and today I would like to use the first about 20 minutes to introduce one study, then the rest of the time to introduce the second study, both of which are about the Chinese electric vehicle market. Bruce gave a really nice introduction about the broad automotive industry in China. We are going to zoom in into the electric vehicle segment in China. In particular, we are interested in understanding the role of the government in this particular market. So we know the future of transportation is electric. After about 10 years of market development, the global sales of electric vehicles reached over 2 million units in 2019. So this figure shows the sales from 2012 to 2019 in European countries in red, US in green, and China in blue. So during the past couple of years, the sales in China, the EV sales in China have accounted for about 50% of the global EV sales. In terms of the EV market share country by country, Norway has by far the largest market share, about 56%. in the new vehicle market in Norway, Netherlands 15%, China 5%, US about 2%. If we look at the expansion or the charging infrastructure across countries, China by end of 2019 had over 500,000 charging ports. So this by far the largest number of charging stations in the world. Now, in terms of the market structure, Bruce spent quite a bit of time talking about the broad market structure of China automotive industry. So let's look at the EV production. So China's market is much competitive. It's less concentrated compared to the US market. So in the US, we have about a dozen automakers that produce EVs. And Tesla is the largest, accounts for over 50% of the market share in the EV segment. But if you look at China, there are over 60 automakers that are producing EVs and over 200 models compared to about 70 models in the US. BYD has about 20% of market share, followed closely by Beijing and Shanghai Auto. Okay, so Chinese government has set very ambitious goals in terms of the electric vehicle adoption, but also fuel economy standard for the industry. So for 2020, the goal of EV sales is 2 million units. And I'm going to show you what's happening this year. And this is unlikely to be met for a variety of reasons. 2012, the goal is to hit 7 million sales of EVs, accounting for about 20% of the overall new vehicle market. And 2030, 15 million units of EVs, 40% of new vehicle sales. If you look at average fuel economy, the goal is 5 liters. Average fuel economy is 5 liters per 100 kilometer this year. That's translated to about 47 miles per gallon and comes down to 3.2 liter per 100 kilometer. That translates to about 74 miles per gallon. So it's quite aggressive. And part of the strategy is to promote the electric vehicles in order to meet this aggressive target. Now, in terms of EV sales month by month, during the last few years from 2008, this gray bar here shows the month-to-month sales in 2018. You can see there's a nice trajectory of increase of sales month-to-month in 2018, sorry. The light blue bar in the middle shows the sales in 2019. In the first 6 months, the sales pretty nice, and it was increased relative 2018, but we see a dramatic drop from July due to the phase out of the subsidies. But then in 2020, now in February, Bruce shows the general kind of sales for all new vehicles. But here we see a big drop for electric vehicles as well, because much of the country was locked down in February. But as the country opens in March and April, we see the sales have increased over time. But we won't. It's very unlikely that China will meet the 2 million goal this year. Okay, in order to really promote this technology, countries throughout the world have adopted various policies, financial incentives, and also non-financial incentives. In terms of financial incentives, there are federal government incentives and also incentives or subsidies from local governments. In terms of the federal subsidy in China and the United States, there are key differences. First, the subsidy, the level of subsidy in China is based on the range, the driving range of the vehicle. In the US, it's based on capacity. Second, the overall subsidy level is actually more generous in China than in the US. So let's look at the central subsidies or federal subsidies provided in China in RMB in 2013, 2019. So it is based on driving range, as I mentioned. In 2013, the minimum requirement for driving range is 80 kilometers. And for those vehicles, they get about $5,000 subsidy. But for vehicles that had range over 250 kilometers, they get over $8,000 worth of subsidy from the central government alone. For PHEVs, the minimum requirement is 50 kilometers, but all the PHEV models actually need this subsidy. So all those models get about $5,000 subsidy in 2013. Over time, the subsidy has reduced. For example, in 2015, the subsidy has reduced across the board. Now, at the same time, the requirement has tightened. For example, the minimum requirement for driving range has increased from 80 in earlier years to 100 in 2016, 2017, and then increased further to 250 in 2018 and to 250 in 2019. At the same time, the amount of subsidy has reduced over time. Now, there are a variety of local policies, including financial incentive in order to reduce vehicle ownership operating cost. The local incentives tend to be in proportion to the central subsidy. There are also vehicle tax exemption, charging fee subsidy, etc. In terms of non-financial incentive, there are several of them that are quite interesting. The first one is a preferential treatment on EVs under purchase quota systems. So what are purchase quota systems? So in China, as we know, traffic congestion, air pollution are really very pressing challenges in urban areas in China. So in order to address these challenges, local governments try to really curb the dramatic growth of vehicle ownership. So some of the cities adopt a cap or a quota system for newly issued vehicle licenses each year and cap that to a certain level. For example, in Beijing, they cap a total number of new vehicles sold or new license issues to about 150,000 units. And then they treat EVs and gasoline vehicles differently under the quota system. The second policy is a road access privilege. In many cities, again, in order to address traffic congestion, air pollution, some of the cities use this driving restriction policy, which basically says that for a given vehicle, you can only drive 4 days out of 5 during the work days. And EVs in general are exempt from this restriction. The third policy that is quite interesting to look at is a green plate policy. This policy rolled out in 2016 in 3 waves across the country. This policy basically says that it's mostly really is a marketing effort where the government says, if you buy an EV, you get a distinctive looking green plate that for a variety of reasons, for example, to increase the awareness of consumers or to make consumers feel good about themselves as well. So starting from 2018, there are several important changes. For example, starting from 2018, the subsidy used to, based on driving range, now is adjusted also based on 2 additional requirements on energy efficiency, but also battery energy density as well. Starting from 2019, the local subsidies are were required to be removed by June 26th by the central government. Then there is also this new energy vehicle credit mandate that are being implemented. Under this mandate, for each EV sold, the automaker will get a credit as a function of range and energy efficiency. You could get a 1 credit or 1.2 or 0.8, depending on the range or energy efficiency. And then the total credits from an automaker need to reach, for example, 10% of total sales in 2018, and that the percentage is increasing over time. The subsidies are scheduled to phase out in 2020, but due to the pandemic, the government has extended the subsidies to 2022. Okay, so in the first study, what we are trying to do is try to understand quantitatively the importance of driving factors behind the rapid growth of the Chinese EV market. And we are going to use try to really put a number on the impacts of different policies on sales of electric vehicles. What we are going to do, we are going to use sales by city, by model, by quarter from 2015, 2018 in 150 cities in China. These 150 cities include top 40 cities with the largest EV sales, and also their neighboring cities. So these 150 cities accounted for 78% of national EV sales during this period that we study. And we also collect comprehensive local, non-local, financial and non-financial policies across these cities. Okay. So just to give you a sense of the sales per million resident by city. So in 2015, the average is 67 units per million residents across these 150 cities. But you see there is quite a bit of variation in 2015. But you can see in 2018, the variation is even larger here. The average is 500 units EVs sold per million residents across these 150 cities. So the idea is really to link the sales, the variation in sales across cities over time to changes in subsidies, to changes in other policies as well, in order to understand the roles of these different policies, whether financial or non-financial incentives. So this is the only equation that I have in the slides. I understand that many in the audience are from data analytics. So I want to show you a little bit what's under the hood here for our study. So the variable on the left-hand side is logarithm of sales Q by model, by CDC, and also by time, which is year, quarter in our data. We are going to interested in finding out the impact of subsidy, which is part of the consumer price, P, for model K, CDC at time T. The subsidy varies across city, therefore the consumer price will be different from city to city, even for the same model in the same quarter. N here is the number of charging ports in our data in the CDC at time T. DR is the driving restriction, which varies by model because driving restrictions sometimes are different for different, whether it's an EV or battery electric vehicle or PHEV. And that varies across city over time as well. And then this GP is the green plate policy that roll out across cities over time. So we see this, we see variation across vehicle models, but also across city over time. We are going to interest in these four coefficients, beta 1 to beta 4. The key challenge in really estimating or distinguishing the impact of these policies from other things that could affect vehicle sales, right? So these could be changes in vehicle attributes such as the vehicle size or driving range, but more importantly, there are many other things that could affect vehicle sales or EV sales, but those things could actually also be correlated with the government decision in providing subsidy, amount of subsidy they provide, or the installation of charging infrastructure, or the implementation of driving restriction policy or green plate policy or other policies. So we really want to control for these so-called unobservables, things that we do not observe in our data, but that could affect sales. And those things could also be correlated with the variables that we are interested in. Therefore, if we do not pay attention and we just do a simple correlation, we could misattribute the impact from other things to the impact of policies. We don't want to do that. So we have a really econometric model to really control for the other, we call that confounding factors, so that we can have confidence in the estimates of the key coefficients we are interested in. So without going into the details how we control for those things, I'm just gonna really discuss a bit about the coefficient estimates. Again, the dependent variable, the variable on the left hand of the equation is log EV sales. So this coefficient on consumer price tell us that for an increase of 10,000 RMB in consumer price, for example, due to subsidy, we will see about 16% of increase in EV sales. In terms of the charging ports, for increase of 1,000 charging ports in the city, we would see about 20% of the increase in EV sales in that city. And the third variable that we are interested in, this EV exempt from driving restriction, we do not find a statistically significant impact, likely due to the fact that consumers have other ways to bypass this policy, for example, carpool or using Didi or using public transit, etc., rather than buying an EV in the presence of this policy. The fourth variable that we are interested in, this green plate policy, we find a pretty big impact from this policy. And these results, these three coefficients that I show that have statistically significant results are actually quite robust across a whole range of specifications, different controls in the estimations that I won't have time to go into, but I'll provide a paper and that you can look at. So we are quite comfortable with these estimates. Once we have these estimates, we can simulate what would have happened to EV sales if we have removed a policy, one policy at a time. Now, if we remove subsidy policies, the blue line here shows the sales under this counterfactual scenarios together with the 95% confidence interval of the estimates. Basically, our simulation showed that these subsidies from both the central government and the local government accounted for about 55% of the EV sold during this data period from 2015 to 2018. Now, if we remove the green plate policy, we would see a reduction of EV sales by 18%. That's a large reduction if you're thinking about really the relatively low cost of this particular policy. Now, the findings shows that the government policies really played a crucial role in the rapid growth of the EV market. We show the consumer subsidies, about 45,000 RMB, explained about 55% of EV sales during the period from 2015 to 2018. Now that has important implications going forward as China is phasing out the subsidies and using other policies such as the new energy vehicle mandate and other policies to promote the technology, because that has different implications on how automakers gonna comply with those mandates. Second, we find the investing charging infrastructure actually is very important. Based on our estimates and based on the cost of charging infrastructure, we find our analysis show that investing in charging infrastructure, for example, through government subsidy, is nearly 4 times as effective as consumer subsidies in promoting EV sales. There are a variety of reasons. For example, it could be due to the fact that the private charging is quite limited due to the housing structure in China. Most people live in condos rather than single-family house in the US. And also due to the fact that consumers who purchase EVs in the early stage of this new technology are relatively less price sensitive. And this finding, the fact that charging infrastructure actually is a much better policy in terms of bang for the buck in promoting the EV technology, is actually not unique to China. We found the same finding, similar finding in the US, although not this 4 times, we find about 2 times as effective. And there are similar results from Norway as well by other researchers. We also find that this green plate policy, as I mentioned, is very effective. This really highlights important psychological and social dimensions of the diffusion of this particular technology that goes beyond simple in terms of the financial incentive. Okay, so in the remaining kind of 4 minutes, I'm going to briefly talk about the second study where we are going to try to dig deeper in terms of the subsidy, the role of the subsidy. So this shows the worldwide EV subsidy in dark blue here on the top, and also worldwide consumer spending on EVs. It basically says that for every $4 consumer put or spend in the EV market, the government put in one additional dollar as government incentives, through government incentives. Now, how government subsidize EVs actually varies across different countries. As I mentioned, China base the subsidy amount on the driving range. Japan does the same thing. We call that attributes-based subsidies. The US subsidies based on battery capacity, as I mentioned. South Korea's subsidy based on size, battery capacity in the past, but now they are also adding driving range to that as well. Many European countries use a constant subsidy. So we ask in this study, does the choice of target attributes, whether it's driving range or capacity or battery capacity or a uniform, matter, right? Meaning, does that actually give us different impacts on consumer demand for automakers in terms of profitability, on the society in terms of, for example, air pollution, holding the total subsidy fixed? So we have quite a sophisticated model where we study this question, but just show you the data, this kind of the pattern jumping out from the data without any model, right? You can look at the driving range distribution in China over time. In 2015, you can see there is clear bunching on these cutoffs. This 80 kilometer here is the minimum requirement. 150 kilometer, you get more. For 250 kilometer, you get even more. In 2016, they removed the 80 kilometer. They increased the minimum to 150. You can see a drop in the number of models in that range. Interestingly, if you look at 2018, there were additional cutoffs, 300 or 400 added to this subsidy policy, and you can see increase in the number of models in those driving range. So you can see a clear bunching that suggests automaker actually responded to this policy by changing their vehicle attributes. For example, using a larger battery, but also change their vehicle design, such as reducing the size of the vehicle or the weight of the vehicle in order to increase the range. So that's really a kind of, from the data, you can also see that the difference in vehicle size in China and the US, these are the top 10 EV models. Green represent BEVs and purple represent PHEVs. For PHEVs, because all the PHEV models in China meet the minimum requirement of 50 kilometer, so there is really not a binding constraint. So we can see the PHEV models in China have similar size to the PHEV models in the US, the top 10 models, top 10 sales. But then if you look at the BEVs, in green, the BEVs in China tend to be much smaller than the BEVs in the US because the automakers try to downsize their vehicle in order to increase their range to get more subsidy. So I'm half minutes over time, so I have 2 more slides. Now, if we base our model, we can simulate what would have happened if we use a different target attributes. For example, if we, instead of using this cutoffs, if we make the subsidy as a linear function of driving range instead of the kind of discrete jumps, or if we base the subsidy as a linear function of battery capacity or based on weight or a constant subsidy, what would happen? So the purple bars shows what in our data, the clear bunching as I showed you, the blue bars are the model predictions from our simulations. You can see no matter what policy we use, we won't see as dramatic bunching as what we see in the data, because automakers are going to have different incentives in designing their vehicles. In particular, if you look at the vehicle weights, When we use a subsidy that is based on weight, we will see automakers who are going to produce heavier EVs. If the subsidy is based on battery capacity, we'll see firms going to use a larger batteries. But overall, we find the subsidy design that is based on capacity tend to be the best from the society overall. Once we take into account the impact on consumers, on firm profit, on air pollution as well. Again, I won't have time to go into the details, but to conclude, we found that government policy played a really big role in pushing China to be the largest EV market. The policy combined accounted for 70% of sales from subsidies and from the green plate policy. Similar impacts are found for US and Norway. Subsidy based on the driving range as implemented in China led to unintended consequences in the sense that firms try to downsize their vehicles in order to receive more subsidy that have that could lead to some socially undesirable consequences. Moving forward, as I mentioned, with the phase out the subsidy after 2022, could China's market sustain its growth without large subsidies? Based on our analysis, it suggests this is unlikely going to happen unless China going to ramp up other policies in order to push this technology forward. Another question we have in mind is with nearly 100 EV producers and growing, will there be consolidation as government move from this carrot approach by providing subsidy to a stick approach by using this mandate through new energy vehicle credit or average fuel economy standard? All right, so that concludes my talk, and thanks very much again for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Sanjun. Let's do a little Q&A with you. We got some very good questions from our audience about your presentation.
All right.
Some of it fits in with some of the questions that I already had for you.
Okay.
I'm going to start with one of mine. Is the NEV mandate for manufacturers still in place?
I believe so. Things are changing very quickly.
12% situation, is that still in place?
I believe so. Okay. But as situation evolves quite quickly in China, I need to double check whether there are recent changes. As I mentioned, the credit has been extended, or the subsidy has been extended. That's a new policy, from April. So things are changing as the government try to figure out the ways to address, the new challenges. At the same time, they also want to keep this market going and reach the target they set in terms of both the sales, but also the average fuel economy.
Okay. One of the other questions that came up was, is there more or less reliance on public charging infrastructure in China compared to the US?
That's a really good question. I think the data on charging behavior is still a bit limited for us to see definitely. But as I mentioned, there are relatively limited private charging stations because people live in condos for the most part. So they don't really have the space for a private charging port of their own, but rather a lot of condos actually, for new condos, especially, there is a government requirement that you actually designate a certain area for charging station for your apartment complex. So I think my suspicion is yes, but I don't have data.
Yeah, I agree. In particular, your understanding of the how people live in China. If you're living in apartments or in condos, unless you have that already built into the condo, which most places do not, you're going to rely more on public charging. In the U.S., more people have homes and garages, and they're able to do this. So I think that's right. I think it makes more sense that it's a little different strategy for. That's right. And I think it showed in your data.
That's why. Yeah.
So the charging was 4 times more important in China. And you said about 2 times as important.
2 times in the US. Yeah, exactly. And it's about also 2 to 3 times in Norway as well. And the data we use, the number of charging stations in our data actually are public charging ports. So that tells us the effect of the public charging infrastructure.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Here's another question. This has to do with and I think you mentioned this, it has to do with kind of where we are in terms of the evolution of EVs in globally, but also in China. And how do you see changes applying? You know, you showed some good data about how manufacturers would respond with given certain scenarios. How do you see that playing out in the probably short term, probably over the next 5 years or so?
Right. So good question. So our study clearly shows that automakers respond to the incentive structure, right? And with the subsidy being phased out, that means the consumer have to pay a higher price for these models. So we suspect that automakers are going to try to produce kind of cheaper vehicles and smaller vehicles potentially. And we can see that already in the data. I think for the September, October, I think the most popular EV model in China is not a BYD, is not Tesla, rather is a small EV model. Bruce is nodding, know that, right? Yeah. It's produced by Wuling, and it's only $4,200. Right. It's a very cheap kind of small, tiny EV model. So I think going forward, I think that's probably gonna be there. But at the same time, there's a countervailing forces. That is, as income goes up, as consumers kind of demand for luxury vehicles increase as well, you would also see kind of automakers gonna want to produce some kind of a luxury or high quality EV models as well. So I think the market segmentation will become even further there.
Yeah, that
in terms of
will expand, right?
That's right. That's right.
We see that with NIO and XPeng, and these are more luxury vehicles.
Exactly, to tailor to really different market segments as the EV market expand in China as well, as more and more consumers are coming into this market and want to buy an EV model.
Right, right.
So
we see that from manufacturers just as a way of managing their costs. Because usually for luxury vehicles, they're able to charge a little more because people are willing to pay a little more. So they're the vehicles that come from on the luxury side. As we've seen so many times in the past, where new technologies show up first on the luxury brands, and again, EVs become one of the can be one of those luxuries.
That's right.
Okay, got some more questions for you. Let's see. Now, you and I spoke about this before, and I want to get your opinion on this, and we'll ask also Michael Wang about this as well, because he's dealing with emissions story. How do you see the Chinese government managing the twin goals of reducing congestion and reducing emissions?
Right. So yeah, no, those are really tough challenges. And I've done a fair amount of work to look at different policies, including the driving restriction policy that has been implemented in many cities, the purchase quota in order to really slow down the dramatic rise of vehicle ownership, especially in the mega cities in China. But then there is also another goal that Bruce, we talk about, that is to still grow the industry, right? Let the auto industry grow, because that's really considered a pillar industry by a lot of provinces in their 5-year plan. So they still want to see a very robust, auto market. So this is really tricky challenge. It's very tough challenge. I can't pretend to know the solution to this, but I think that really tells us the importance of vehicle technology in order to address, for example, air pollution issue, right? So you really want to promote cleaner technology, the EVs, hydrogen, cell vehicles and other technologies down the road in order to address the air pollution issue, but also have a robust automotive manufacturing sector still, right? That's one policy. Second is there are policies that try to address traffic congestion issue. For example, congestion pricing. That's something that that I've studied quite a bit, and this is something being considered not only in China but also New York City, Manhattan, as we know, that's going to be slated to be implemented in next year, next couple of years, where you want to put a price on the usage of the road capacity. Once you have a price on this resource, so that it's not free to everybody, and that way people are going to drive less or thinking about the different routes or different time to drive. That has been shown as an effective strategy to address this traffic congestion issue. For example, in Singapore, that's a very good example of road pricing that they have implemented that policy starting from 1975. So, you know, I'm happy to go into details, but I think, you know, if there are other questions, I'll
I think this is the last question. It's an interesting one and kind of a big one that we just kind of recently have found out about, and I'm not sure if it's what role it's playing for EVs. One of the things that has been talked about is that some of the ride-sharing companies, and DD being one of them, are purchasing a large amount of EVs. And we've seen this also in the way that the Chinese government has required the provincial governments as well as the central government vehicles to make this transition to EVs, so that things were, I mean, in China, they call them special purpose vehicles, ambulances, garbage trucks, buses, and these are all kind of being forced into the EV ranks. But there's this other story about these ride-sharing companies that are buying a lot of EVs. Are you seeing that in your research?
So we haven't paid a lot of attention to that. I think these are, we call that institutional purchases in China. Right. It is a higher share in China than in the US. I forgot about that. I think it's about 15 to 20% in China. Okay. So this institutional purchases, whether it's a taxi company or other companies. Right. I think the Chinese government consider, you know, you mentioned, Bruce, the special purpose vehicles such as the buses. They consider this as almost a captured market where they have a bigger influence in terms of the purchase decision, right. And they want really promote those, EV sales in those segments. But at the same time, you know, the institutional purchase, such as taxi fleet, they could also exert a larger influence compared to consumer decisions. Right. And they definitely want to take advantage of that as well. I think Hongtu probably can tell us a bit more how, how this policy is affecting kind of taxi fleet and you know.
Yes, I hope he can, add a little to that. Right. That story. We'll ask him when his time is up. But I want to thank you for your presentation and being with us today. Now, because of your work with a variety of these topics that we're working on, we hope you can continue to stay with us and maybe answer some of the other questions that come up along the way related to some of the research that you've been doing, because you've really been looking at this a variety of topics related to EVs, as well as in particular, I think EVs in China. So again,
absolutely, thank you, Bruce. Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity. It's great to be here.
All right, let's go to Michael Wang. Michael, let's unmute you and get your video going.
Yes, thank you very much. Do you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay, I'll put the video on and then I'll share my screen.
Well, let me do my little introduction for you, Michael.
Okay.
So Michael is a distinguished fellow and director of the Systems Assessment Center, Energy Systems Division at Argonne National Laboratory. He leads the ongoing development of Argonne's GREET model, software model for life cycle analysis of vehicle technologies and transportation fuels. He's a fellow of Society of Automotive Engineers and a member of the Transportation Energy Committee of the Transportation Research Board. He has a PhD and MS in environmental science from UC Davis and a BS in agricultural meteorology from the China Agricultural University in Beijing. Welcome, Michael.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Do you see one screen or two screens on your end?
I have one screen. I see one screen.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So as you can see, I'm going to present our wheel-to-wheels analysis of plug-in electric vehicles in China with the China GREET model. So as you see, I have two people in our group work on this area in the last couple of years. So many of you on this call knows the GREET model. So Argonne has been developed and applied the GREET model over the past 25 years with support of US Department of Energy. The model, in fact, has two major sub-models. As you see here, GREET 1 is the so-called fuel cycle model, or wheel-to-wheels modeling for fuel production and combustion of vehicles. On the other hand, GREET 2 address vehicle cycle energy and emission issues. So these two work together to address life cycle analysis of vehicle and fuel technologies. Today, my talk is primarily on GREET 1, the wheel-to-wheels analysis. This slide summarizes the GREET user base. As of now, we have more than 33,000 GREET users globally. The key users include the oil companies, energy companies, and government agencies. This slide shows you some of the derivatives from GREET. For example, the IKEA GREET we developed that is used by us and other organizations for international civil aviation organizations to examine jet fuel pathway carbon intensities. And as many of you know, California Air Resources Board has developed a GREET based on the Argonne GREET. It's called CA GREET. This is used for California's LCFS regulation compliance. And in the past, the EPA used the GREET for its own renewable fuel standard regulation development. Some other government agencies, such as NHTSA, has been used GREET to evaluate the impact of the fuel economy regulations. So with DOE and Saudi Aramco support, in the last couple of years, we made some effort to develop China GREET version for WTW analysis of vehicle technologies and fuels in China. The model is intended to analyze WTW energy use and emissions for vehicle and fuel technology combinations in China. It is built on the modeling capability with the US GREET model. As you see here on the chart, we include many fuel options from different feedstocks. And we include different vehicle types in GREET, in China GREET. This is a screenshot of China GREET. So as you see, we built onto the US GREET. So the first choice is whether to simulate US or China. And For your regional analysis, we separate China into 6 regions, as you see here on the map in the bottom. And later on, I'll present you some regional result from China grid. And in terms of the time, we cover through 2050 to take into account the advance of technology development, both for fuel production and vehicle technologies. The vehicle types, so far we covered on-road vehicle types, the passenger cars, light-duty trucks, and heavy-duty trucks. And then we have different functional unit. So now I'll take you a little bit deeper on the different modules in grid. For petroleum module, as we all know, China imports significant amount of petroleum from different fuels. So we benefit from a study that I was part of it. So this was published in Nature Energy in 2018. So as you see, the carbon intensity of different petroleum supply sources to China is very different. On the other right, the so-called carbon intensity supply curve for different petroleum supplies to China. And the map shows you primarily for now, the petroleum supply to China is Russian, Central Asia, of course, Middle East, and there's some Central and South American supply. So we was able to incorporate the result, as you see here, into China grid. The natural gas module took a somewhat similar approach. As many of us know, China has expanded natural gas use primarily for power generation and for residential use in cities. And of course, the Chinese natural gas supply is still somewhat limited. So here on the left side, you see the 3 natural gas supply groups, the domestic conventional natural gas, domestic unconventional gas, and overseas liquefied natural gas as imported natural gas. So the carbon intensity are somewhat different among the 3 supply groups. And on the map, you see how much from where for the Chinese natural gas supply as of 2016. And now, if we use the Chinese projection of the growth between 2016 and 2030, so now you see on the right side the natural gas supply from different sources and with different carbon intensities. So if you look at the scale, the prediction is the natural gas use in China will more than double from 2016 to 2030. And of course, there are going to be significant amount of natural gas import, either through pipeline gas from Central Asia and Russia, or LNG from Australia, Middle East, and even potentially from North America. So again, the supply curve show you the carbon intensity varies significantly from around 5 grams per megajoule to as high as 60 some grams per megajoule. So let's give you a high-level summary of petroleum and natural gas supply. So now I'll present the electricity module in China grid. So for electricity module, we start from upstream energy recovery, the generation of electricity, and of course transmission and distribution, and finally end use. And we have we have many electricity generation technologies included in the electric module. For example, of course, we have coal-fired power plant, natural gas power plant, hydropower, wind power, solar power, and nuclear power plant. So here is chart summarize the projection from now into 2050. So here we have a reference case, lower carbon case, and higher carbon case. These are the three cases projected by International Energy Agency. So you see among the three cases, the differences are significant. So if you look at the black bar, that's coal-fired power share. So from a reference case to lower case to high case, significant difference in terms of the share of coal-fired power plant, wind and solar, and nuclear to some extent. So this has significant impact on carbon intensity of electricity generation, as you see in the bottom of the slide. So we see right now, the carbon intensity of Chinese electricity is roughly about 700 grams per kilowatt hour. Looking into future in 2050, the carbon intensity can vary from 600 to about 150 grams per kilowatt hour. So it's really depending on what pathways we're going to see it. Carbon intensity can have large variation in China in the future. So so that's kind of your nationwide trend from now to 2050. So now if we take a look of the regional variations, so the chart on the left side show you the 2017 generation mix among the 6 Chinese regions. So not surprisingly to many of us, the northern regions still rely heavily on coal. The southern regions, such as the south, rely significantly on hydropower. And on the right side, you see the carbon intensity of electricity in regions. So in northern regions, the carbon intensity is as high as 1,000 grams per kilowatt hour. Of course, this will have significant impact on PEV, WTW, GHG emission performance among the 6 regions, which I'll show you later on. So in terms of the amount of coal power generated at the provincial level, as you see here, this is in each province, how much electricity generated from coal in 2017. So as you already said from the previous slide, northern regions and the northern provinces rely heavily on coal. So as you see on this map, they're very much in northern provinces. And as far as the share of coal-fired power plant, the northern regions, some regions go as high as 90% of the power relied on coal. So this has tremendous implication for GHG emissions and for air polluted emissions as well. And as we all know, northern provinces still have severe air pollution issues, and the coal-fired power plants are a significant source for air polluted emissions as well as for greenhouse gas emissions. So, so that was based on generation. But now, let me take us one step further. So if we use electricity in our province, not all the electricity used in our province is produced in the same province. Just like in the US, we have electricity export and import among different regions in the US, and similar situation in China. So in the last 12 months, we start to analyze consumption-based electricity carbon intensity versus generation-based carbon intensity. So from an analytical point of view, or from end use point of view, consumption-based carbon intensity is more relevant because from causality point of view, what causes the carbon and emissions more important from end use point of view, especially for PEVs. So if you look at the regional differences of generation versus consumption-based carbon intensity, there are some differences. And I highlight 3 provinces and municipalities here: Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangdong. So if you see red versus blue, there are significant differences. In the case of Beijing, the consumption-based carbon intensity is much higher than generation-based carbon intensity. And that's because Beijing import significant amount of coal, significant amount of electricity from surrounding provinces, which are based on coal-fired power plant. So that's why consumption carbon intensity is much higher than generation-based carbon intensity. But different trends in Guangdong and Shanghai. That's where when the 2 provinces import electricity, they import electricity with significant share of hydropower. So that's why the consumption CI is somewhat lower than generation CI for those 2 provinces and cities. So this chart summarizes the fuel economy or fuel consumption values we built into China grid. This is based on more than 7,000 individual vehicle models fuel consumption values as published by Ministry of Industry and Information Technology. So you see, of course, different weight classes has very different fuel consumption implications, and the 4 technology groups has different implications on fuel consumption. The internal gasoline cars, battery EVs, hybrid electric vehicles, and PHEVs. So here is the table summarize what you saw, the 7,000 some model fuel consumption result. So if you see what's on the right, the real world vehicle energy consumption in megajoule per kilometer, so the RCEV, hybrid, BEV, and PHEV has, of course, we all know have very different energy consumption implications. And we took some effort to adjust the labeled fuel and electricity consumption to real world consumption by assuming 20% real world increase in gasoline car fuel consumption. So that implies about 17% reduction in fuel economy. And for BEV, we use the 40% increase in electricity consumption, and that implies 29% reduction in fuel economy. So these are somewhat consistent with what we see in the US. So now, with the electricity generation, with the gasoline, with the petroleum and natural gas modules, and the vehicle fuel consumption values, as you saw in the last couple of slides. So here, you see the wheel-to-wheels greenhouse gas emissions. The above chart is gasoline vehicles for the 30 province. The below chart shows the PEV, both battery EV and PHEV in the bottom by province. So why the variation for gasoline car is small among the province and HEV. For PEV, the variation is significant, and that's primarily because the electricity embedded carbon intensity. So at high level, if we compare BEV versus gasoline car, that's the first map of this chart. And you see in southern and western provinces, and we see a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. The next chart shows PHEV versus gasoline car, similar trend. But then if you see BEV versus HEV, that's the lower left map, then now the pattern is somewhat different. Now we have more provinces that BEVs may have greenhouse gas emission increase versus HEV. And the last map shows PHEV versus HEV comparison. So it really depends how you produce electricity for PEV application, and how efficient the powertrain systems. So here you see the 4 powertrain systems. So if we take the BEV versus HEV comparison, so now we see in northern and northwestern regions, we see overall the BEVs would have GHG emissions increased versus hybrid electric vehicles at the provincial level. And quickly, so that's the wheel-to-wheels result based on China grid. And at the same time, we develop our model. It's called China Vehicle Fleet Model. This model is leverage Argonne's long-term research and modeling effort to look at technology penetration in the transportation sector in China. And they base the fleet turnover at technology penetration. We predict energy consumption and emissions for the Chinese transportation sector. So I'll quickly show you the model and the sample result. So to increase the data availability and consistent among the various statistical highway vehicles in China, we classify the model into 3 categories and 9 types. And we base on the historical and potential future application of conventional and advanced vehicle fuel and technology combinations. So we add up as 49 detailed vehicle technologies and 10 vehicle and 10 fuel and energy types. So below you see the combination of vehicle types and fuel types. So these are all built into China vehicle fleet model. So quickly give you some sample result from that. So here we interact between China grid and China vehicle fleet model to generate a wheel-to-wheels result. So our base case shows that the energy consumption for the Chinese transportation sector will continue to grow, and together with that, greenhouse gas emissions will continue to grow. So this is the base case, and of course we have some scenario for lower greenhouse gas in transportation. And so let me take you to something we published in this past summer. We put 11 articles in a special issue in the Journal of Mitigation and Adaptation Strategies for Global Change. So this is from the US and Chinese researchers under the SORC CVC. So the papers, most of the papers are open access, so you can go to the journal to see the articles. So here we address the trend of the market and the technologies in the US and in China, and we examine some specific issues like driving patterns and recharge infrastructure. So if you're interested in the some of the specific issues in the PEV space for both China and the US, and we have some of the issues covered. Yeah, let me stop here and to address any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Michael. Let's bring you back to let's bring your screen back.
Yeah, let me stop. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's deep there. You've got you guys have been doing a lot of work over the last 25 years. And I guess that's where I kind of want to start. You've been using the GREET model for, like, as you said, you've been working on it for 25 years. And you've obviously increased its use. You've extended the different ways that it's being used. From your experience, what are the biggest challenges for you in terms of the inputs for the GREET model?
Yeah, data definitely is the major challenge, and as that's true for any models, if you do not have reliable data, then your results are not reliable. So for the US GREET version will benefit from extensive databases from government agencies such as ERA and EPA and industry sources. Of course, we interact with the industries, the energy industry and other industry to generate better data in order to produce reliable results. The China GREET face same challenge. Data reliability is a major challenge. And between US and China, data availability in China is still a major issue. So data is somewhat limited in China. So we, through our collaborations, through our research, we got as much as we can. We benefit all the available Chinese data sources for China GREET. But China GREET data is still not as reliable as the US GREET.
Are there some areas in the data from China that you see in particular is that you would like more detailed information on?
Yes, we do. For the Chinese situation, the VI cooperation, as you saw, we got 7,000 some model specific data for fuel consumptions. And we made some effort to address on-road fuel consumption versus the certified or window sticker fuel consumption values as published by Ministry of Industry and Information Technologies. But still, there are still large variations of on-road fuel consumption versus certified fuel consumption. And that's where I think still more effort would be beneficial. And we know for advanced technologies like BEVs versus internal combustion engine technologies, on-road degradation is very different. And we know consumers now realize that, we as researchers realize that. So that's still a major area. And another area is for gasoline and diesel. So gasoline and diesel, you saw we benefit from the publication of different crude supply to China. So we feel comfortable with that. But petroleum refinery operation in China, we still do not have enough data and understanding of the gasoline and diesel production for the Chinese vehicle use.
Right. So in that case, are you estimating, doing estimates based on what other countries are doing in terms of the those particular variables?
We are doing both ways. We're doing some modeling for individual Chinese refineries use the so-called linear programming models available. So that would give us some sense of the energy and mass balance of petroleum refinery operation. And we compare the modeled result with the result we see in the US, because the US petroleum refineries have some data reported to ERA and EPA, so we do some cross comparison. The problem is cross comparison is suffer from a major issue. Refinery configurations are very different. Even within a country, if we see the refinery in Chicago area versus refinery in California, very different. And the Chinese refinery configuration is very different from US refinery configurations. So that adds some technical challenges for cross comparison.
Sure. Thank you. One question about the electricity module. You showed some big differences, huge significant differences between the low and the high carbon case. What will determine whether the low or the high carbon case plays out in the 2050 timeframe?
That's a good question. And the high carbon case reflect the economics. The coal is still cheap. So coal is cheap, coal is the base power supply. And wind and solar came a long way, and now it become cheap to be able to compete with coal and natural gas. But the wind and solar still have this intermittency issue, as we all see in the US and China and many other countries. So we're still monitor the situation with the significant penetration of the wind and solar, whether the Chinese grid system will be able to adapt. So that's a big unknown globally for scale up wind and solar. And if we do air pollution control, the air pollution control itself has pushed the retirement of coal-fired power plant, as we see in the last 10 or 15 years in China and in the US, as we have seen as well. So that's our trend will continue. Greenhouse gas emissions is really depend on individual countries' commitment. And in China committed to a Paris Agreement. So that's a major drive force for your coal-fired power plant retirement. And lately, China commit carbon neutrality in 2060. If these commitments are to be fulfilled, then we see a very high chance to get to the lower carbon scenario. But if not, we may end up in the higher carbon scenario. And for example, last year, 2019, we see a bump in newly built coal-fired power plants in 2019 in China. So you never know, the situation will go to the lower carbon path for sure.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like it's going to be a very challenging time. It's true for the U.S. as well, but
Mhm.
in particular, if you're going to continue to build coal-fired power plants,
Mhm.
you're not going to retire those new ones very soon.
Right.
And there has to be some kind of incentive, some kind
Uh-huh.
of ways of encouraging and supporting the
Mhm.
the transition. When you look at you showed some data on renewables. In the U.S., we've seen a lot of work on renewables, and it's really
Mhm.
shown some real growth. How are renewables playing out in China?
The Chinese renewable growth is faster than the US renewable growth. What I mean is solar and wind specifically, and absolute term and relative term, the growth was faster there. And also, the Chinese nuclear power will grow. The US, as many of us know, nuclear is subject to a lot of uncertainties because other issues, the safety issue and other issues. But in China, there is plan to continue to scale up the nuclear power generation. Hydro in US, there is not much growth or capacity left for hydro. In China, there is still potential resources for hydro power growth. Of course, now there are some concerns about your high head hydro versus low head hydro. The Chinese ambitions are high head hydro growth, the big dams, not said small dams, distributed hydro. Of course, there are some environment and political debate about that because the growth will be way in southwest China, and neighboring countries like India and Vietnam and Thailand are really concerned about the high head hydro with large dams built in China, but affect the downstream ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Last question for you. You've been working with a lot of your colleagues in China. You have colleagues in China that you've been going and meeting with and working with on these issues, and you've provided the results to the colleagues and to the Chinese government. How has the government responded to your findings?
Well, the previous presenter talked about the battery EV regulations and other policies. In the last 20 some years, through our engagement or myself personally involved with my Chinese collaborations, we have had some impact on the Chinese policy development. For example, the fuel consumption standards, the phase one standard put in place in 2003, then subsequently phase two, 3, and 4, we have our result was used by the organizations who developed the fuel consumption standards. The PEV the equivalent ZEV requirement or the NEV requirement in Chinese term, we, together with other organizations such as UC Davis, RCCT, was involved in the PEV incentive and PEV sales requirement discussions. So some of our results were used in the NEV sales requirement. On the other hand, what has not been used was what I presented today, WTW results. So we present WTW results of different technologies, BEVs, PHEVs, and so on. So far, the policies was not reflect with the WTW result. So I hope someday the WTW results will be reflected in recognitions in China and in other parts of the world like EU and US. Japan already take WTW into the 2030 fuel consumption status, but other countries has not.
Very good. All right, Michael, I want to thank you for your time today. Sanjun, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
I wanted to ask you if there's any things any issues related in your research on emissions that you would like to add to to this discussion about emissions in China.
No, I don't really have anything to add other than saying that we actually have been using some of my Michael's earlier research in our analysis, but I'm happy to discover, new findings and research, especially the consumption-based greenhouse gas emission results. So I'm actually looking forward to read the article. Based on the slides, it seems that article is under review now. So it would be great if we can actually get that article and actually be able to cite that results. The cross province by province emission results for PEV and PHEV. So that's really helpful because that's actually something we are using to actually quantify the benefit of EVs in China. So.
All right, very good.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Sanjun. Please stick around for the rest of the conference to if you have any things you want to add to the discussion. Before we get into our next speaker, I wanted to share some of our recent research on the China's new energy vehicles. Sanjun has spoken about some of this already. But I wanted to go over a little bit some of the things that we found out, and we will, before we go to our next speaker, I'll be looking at the Chinese fleet and the NEVs, batteries, charging, and some policy issues. In terms of the fleets, as of June 2020, the number of motor vehicles in China has reached 360 million. Which means there are now more motor vehicles in China than there are in the US. Luckily for China, they don't have as many vehicles per household as we do in the US, but those are primarily automobiles and increasing in about 20 million units annually. But of course, because of some of the issues that we talked about in China, there's a shortage of about 80 million parking lots in the country. And when you look at the size of the cities, there are 69 cities that have fleets surpassing 1 million vehicles. 31 cities have over 2 million vehicles in their fleets. 12 cities have 3 million, and Beijing owns the most vehicles with more than 6 million vehicles. And as of June, according to the official agency for NEV administrations, total number of NEVs have reached 4.1 million vehicles in China. This is the monthly sales data from 2013 on NEVs until 2020. It's pretty hard to read, but you can see that at one point around 2018, they peaked. You see a continuing growth in December. So we're expecting a large number of increase in NEVs in December. But when you look at what's happened between 2020 and 2019, again, you see the increases that have taken place in July and August, September, and October even, that were not there in 2019. Because of, as Sanjun was speaking earlier, that the elimination of subsidies that took place at the end of June in 2019 caused this significant decrease in sales in July and onward until till December. And that's something that's changed within 2020 because of the reinstitution of the subsidies. When you look at the NEV quality survey that JD Power put out recently, you see one particular thing jumps out at you is that there are no foreign companies here other than Tesla, it shows that the BEVs there are some significant differences among the brands, but particularly Tesla and NIO are the ones that stand out as being better in terms of initial quality. In terms of battery, there's a couple things going on in batteries in China, and one is this thing called battery as a service. NIO is already unique in that they do instead of battery charging, they do battery swapping. So they have systems for people coming in and swapping out the batteries for their vehicles. But they also have this thing called battery as a service, and it's a way of making EVs more affordable. Users can buy a vehicle, and if they put up about $10,000 from they'll get a $10,000 reduction in the purchase price and pay a monthly fee of about $140 for a battery pack, kind of a rental for the battery. And meanwhile, the users still enjoy the purchase tax exemption and the government NEV subsidies. XPeng has done a similar thing. They launched their battery leasing program. Again, these tend to be the luxury vehicles, so they are a little more expensive to start with. But the example that we have here of a user can pay only about $18,000 to get a vehicle excluding the battery and spend about $114 per month for kind of renting the battery pack. Besides, XPeng also grants a 30% down payment ratio for consumers to get the battery-free car body, and thus people need as low as $5,000 to be able to drive a car home. Geely is making a move towards battery swapping, similar to what NIO does with their batteries. Geely has completed construction of 35 battery swapping stations in the country. They'll have that by the end of 2020, and they expect to do 1,000 more. One station has about 30 charging lots inside, and they can do about 1,000 swaps per day. Now, when you think about battery swapping, you can't help but think about battery swapping as really similar to going to a gas station, where you're going in and very quickly coming in and out with a new battery. One of the issues that I have with this strategy is that this means that Geely has to have pretty much battery swapping stations everywhere, as many as they have gas stations, as we would have gas stations. But these gas stations that we have fill up every vehicle, whereas if the battery companies start ever doing this battery swapping, each company will have to have its own battery swapping construction and stations, which will multiply, and especially the cost of land in Beijing and Shanghai and in the major cities seems like it'd make it pretty challenging for people to do this, and because these stations are going to have to be near your home, because you may have to just swap out your battery sometime, and you don't want to have to drive very far to have to do this. So this is one of the challenges I see with the swapping story. There is a new JV between CATL, one of the largest battery companies in the world, with FAW. The JV story, very similar to the JV story with General Motors and LG Chem in the US, where the manufacturers now have more skin in the game in terms of how much they're going to have to put in and also get back from a joint venture relationship. And so what's interesting about this JV is that they're going to provide batteries for vehicles for FAW vehicles, but also for Volkswagen's MEB-based models. The ID3 and ID4 will be based on this joint venture between FAW and CATL. In terms of charging, you're really looking at the continued growth of charging in China. The blue bars are cumulative, so you can see these are public charging piles. These are not individual charging. So there are more combined charging piles throughout China than there are here. But most of them there are more public charging, I think, than there are private at this stage. The blue bars show the cumulative. The red bars show you the number of stations that are increasing, and the percentage in the orange line of the percentage increases on a month-to-month basis. So you can see the continued growth in charging. And this map shows you on a basis of a province by province basis where as of May of this year, where most of the charging stations take place. And you can see some of the major provinces: Guangdong, Shanghai at 63,000, Beijing at 57,000. These are tremendous number of public charging stations that China has put out and continues to put out. In terms of Tesla and their chargers, they've already constructed more than 20,000 chargers. In China, there are 490 supercharging stations with over 2,000 destination chargers covering more than 250 cities. As they know, because they're going to have to, as we've discussed already, that there's going to have to be more public charging in China than maybe in the US. And just in Q3, Tesla has built 146 supercharging stations and 137,000 charging piles globally. The charging network will have internationally is more than 30% more than just a year ago. And in terms of policy, and I think Sanjun spoke about this already, the two major things that have taken place in 2020 is the extension of the subsidy plan until the end of 2022. With sudden decreases over time. But commercial NEVs, there won't be decreases in 2020, and the decrease rate will be 10 and 20% compared to that of 2019. It only applies to NEVs that are $42,000 or more eligible for the subsidy, which is significant. And it kind of eliminates the lower end vehicles. And there's a threshold for a number of vehicles that can get a subsidy, with the limit set at 2 million vehicles annually, which is a total of 2 million of all vehicles. So not just by manufacturer. And the new plan is effective as of July, and there's no change in the standards for energy density. And the last thing for the subsidy plan that modified was the reduction, the decrease in what the government expects of NEV sales to represent in 2025 from 25% to 20%. The administration, they say, is making this change for more stable progress in the NEV market while decreasing the pressure put on the manufacturers and giving them more time to come up with more vehicles and sales of NEVs. And finally, we have Beijing's quota system. This is a very interesting story. As of October of this year, there are 460,000 applicants for purchasing a vehicle in Beijing, not just NEVs, but any vehicle. And this number has decreased compared to the last reported period, since many people have already gotten their license plates. They were winners of the NEV quotas for families that don't have cars during the pandemic. So those people got a priority in terms of getting plates. And so of the 54,000 for 2020, again, just in Beijing, according to the current policy, new applicants will need to wait more than 9 years for their turn to buy a car. And when it comes to Beijing license plate, there has been a black market. There used to be a way to buy Beijing plates from other people by faking a marriage with the buyer, then divorcing after the plate is successfully transferred to the buyer. A policy to ban this kind of illegal transaction goes into effect in January of 2021, and thus the price has increased on the black market, so that it's going to cost $20,000 for males and $22,000 for females to be able to to be married to somebody so that they can get a plate. Last year, the price was around $15,000. So this is something that has come up recently. I thought I wanted to share that with you. Let's go to our next speaker, Hantu Zhu. He joined DD in 2018 from his position of endowed Baoshanjing professor in diagnostic imaging and a tenure professor of biostatistics at the MD Anderson Cancer Center and a tenure professor of biostatistics at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Dr. Zhu chairs the Department of Statistics and Decision Sciences and Feature Engineering with AI scientists and engineers on the development of innovative solutions for DD's ride-hailing platform. Dr. Zhu received his PhD degree in statistics from the Chinese University in Hong Kong in 2000. Dr. Zhu, welcome.
Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I think thanks to the organizer for invitation, and also thanks Harry for introducing me to the workshop. And this is a joint work with my collaborators at the DD and of my other researchers. And this is a talk about, I want to say today, is about the three main sections. The first one is about AI for marketplace, and there's many my background. The second one is DD as examples. The third one is about what I have been doing at the DD, and the AI for marketplace. Okay. And everybody knows the AI is artificial intelligence, and there's a lot of success about AI and things in the last 10 to 20 years. And in the last 3 years, Dr. Michael Jordan has been talking about the AI success in 4 generations, 4 categories of applications. And in each generation has a set of applications and its associated methods. And the first generation is between 1990 to 2000 and focus on search fraud detections, search engines, and the supply chain management, among others. Companies use the various statistical methods such as random forest to reduce the fraud detection rate. The second generation is between 2000 and 2010 and focus on recommendation system and the social media and developing an efficient product recommendation engines is critical for many e-commerce companies, including Amazon, Alibaba, eBay. The third generation is from 2010 to now and focus on speech recognition, translation, and computer vision. People are developing various deep learning-based models to mimic the human intelligence, but it's far from human intelligence so far. The fourth generation is an emerging one that focuses on the various markets, including clothing, food, housing, transportation, education, Medicare, and nursing. Markets basically use the Internet of Things and the cloud computing to connect customers and the products together, producing new commercial platforms such as Uber and Didi. It involves multiple agents making a sequence of decisions and leading to improvement of customers' experience and efficiency. And the definition, what is the two-sided markets? Two-sided markets are roughly defined as the markets where one or several platforms enable interaction between end users and try to get the two sides on board by properly pricing each side. Okay. Here are several examples of the two-sided markets, include Airbnb, eBay, Uber, Didi, and Amazon. Okay. For example, Airbnb is a two-sided market with hosts in side one and travelers in side two. And we use Didi as an example. And the ride-sharing platform is also two-sided market with customers inside one and the drivers inside two. It is a complex spatial-temporal ecosystems. The relationship between the two sides, the customer and the drivers, is very complex, it's nonlinear and interactive. Such a relationship is uncertain due to influence of environment and other factors. It's also a complex causal relationship, as well as we are detailed below. Okay. As a reliable shared travel platforms has more than 550 plus millions of users and serving more than 10 billion trips per year. And it has more than 11 business units, including taxi, express, premier, enterprise, bike, and e-bike, among the many other business units. And actually, the number of the business units is increasing almost every year. And it also provides flexible working opportunities and incomes to millions of tens of millions of drivers. And in general, the company provides app-based transportation services, including the taxi hailing, private car hailing, and the social riding sharing and the bike sharing, and also on-demand and the delivery services, and automobile the services including sales, leasing, financing, maintenance, fleet operation, electronic vehicles charge, and co-development of vehicles with automakers. And actually, we just released a new product called the D1 kinds of the DD cars. And also, Didi is one of the leading ride-sharing platforms in the world, and it has launched the service in many countries, including the Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Australia, Japan, Colombia, and Russia, and many other countries. Now it covers more than 260 major cities. Since the 2015, Didi has invested in Grab, Lyft, Ola, Uber, 99, Bolt, and Korean, and they expanded into Latin American, Australia, and Japan. In July 2018, Didi acquired 99, a Brazil ride-hailing app. And also Didi is one of the largest big data companies and platforms. And every day Didi acquires more than 106 terabytes of the vehicle trajectory data per day, and processed around 5,000 terabytes of data per day. And Didi has around 40 millions of the routing requests per day, and also around to calculate around 15 billions of the locations points per day. And using Peking as examples, if we use the trajectory data connected in one day in Peking, we're able to redraw the city transportation maps for more than kinds of 500 times.
Welcome to Didi Chuxing. Didi was founded in 2012 and has been dedicated to providing comprehensive transportation services, including taxi, express, premier, Lux, bus, designated driving, enterprise solutions, bike sharing, e-bike sharing, car sharing, and food delivery. DiDi has become the world's leading one-stop mobile transportation platform, serving more than 550 million users in over 430 cities. DiDi has provided more than 30 million daily trips and 10 billion annual passenger trips. Since our establishment, we have put our mission of to build a better journey into practice. Behind each satisfying journey and smiling user is our company's faith in user value creation, data-driven thinking, win-win collaboration, integrity, growth, and diversity. We strive to ensure that our users travel in safety through technological innovations. We have launched accessible transportation, smoke-free Premier, and bilingual services to provide more comfortable experiences for our users. In 2017, DiDi Chuxing helped reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 1.507 million tons, equivalent to the emissions absorbed by 126 million trees in 1 year. We are cooperating with tens of cities of intelligent transportation, where we leverage big data and artificial intelligence to make urban transportation more efficient. In 2017, we set up DiDi Labs in the Silicon Valley. DiDi provides ride-hailing service in Brazil via the App 99, online hailing service in Mexico and Australia under the DiDi brand, and taxi hailing service in Japan through a joint venture. Going forward, we will continue to place safety as our top priority, making breakthroughs in innovation and development, and will harness the power of technology to lead revolution in automotive and transportation industry and create a future of infinite possibility. DiDi, more than a journey.
And this is a AI ecological layout at the DiDi. And actually, we have been working in these 7 different major topics, and including this intelligence operation, smarter vehicles, smarter transportation, AI for social good, safety, and mapping, and intelligent customer services. Today's talk is mainly cover the intelligence operation. And in the last 3 years, I have been working with a group of the smart people to develop a general framework for the two-sided markets. Our final goal is to develop from technical side, is to develop an AlphaZero, and if people are familiar with that, it's a Go kind of games. You all call a simulator in order to evaluate and improve the operational efficiency of the ride-sharing platforms. Okay. And actually, in the last 3 years, we have identified 5 major research topics, including supply demand forecasting. The second one is the supply and demand diagnosis, and then the policy assessment and the policy optimization, and the last one is the customer life value. Okay. And actually, they needed a method from the experiment designs, deeper reinforcement learning, spatial temporal modeling, and the graphical models. If people are familiar with the interest in data science, and this is a great topic for people jumping inside. And just to give a basic summary of all these new developments in the ride-sharing business in these 5 major topics. And give us ideas. The first topic is about supply the demand planning. And the primary interest is to develop to predict the demand supply distribution across many cities. Okay, and this problem is quite complex, and due to the large number of cities, the heterogeneities across the cities, the complex spatial temporal patterns across different countries and different areas, and also there's some of the kinds of causal relationship among the different environmental factors and all the supply and the demand trends and distributions. And actually, these problems people think about is very similar to weather forecasting. Okay, our goal is to improve the service qualities of the ride-sharing platform to both drivers and the riders. For the driver side, and we want to reduce the hours of empty driving. And for the rider side, we wanted to provide intelligent travel guidance and reduce the cruising times. Okay. And from the platform side, if we have the better supply demand forecasting can fill in the demand supply gap and recognize the market, and we can have the better dispatching and schedule. And at the very beginning, we started with basically to try to develop a forecasting to predict the future orders. Okay, and why is it important? Because it's allowed us to get prepared for future peak hours, and also dispatch vehicles for regions with high demands, and also can allow us to detect abnormal road conditions and respond to the emergency. And in generally, the demand forecasting empowers better strategies and the services outward, okay, beforehand. And actually, we develop a series of all these models with the whole system. Forecast system is based on this kind of deep spatial tempo forecasting system. It consists of three major parts. The first is graph generations, and basically incorporate various different relationships. For the graph generation, we consider three types of the spatial dependency, including road connectivity, POI similarity, and the spatial library. And also we consider these kinds of contextual gated temporal modeling, and to try to incorporate your temporal relationship across times. And also we build this kind of spatial multi-gated connect CN method, and actually we try to incorporate the spatial relationship among the different kinds of the among this spatial dependency. Another kind of the method we developed is basically the supply and demand diagnosis. Why do we care about these kinds of the problems? And actually, we are interested in developing causal models for supply and the demands. We wanted to develop a metric to measure the supply and the demand equilibrium at the both local and global levels. The left upper figures shows that the two scenarios. The first one is the demand is much larger than supplies. And the second one is the demand is much smaller than supplies. And actually measuring supply and demand equilibrium at both global and the local level is critical for optimizing where there's different platform policies. Okay. And this is at a single time points, and actually you'll see these kinds of the supply and the demand distribution in a particular city in China. And actually in practice, you keep in mind the drivers can move around and pick up the customers with some moving cost. And finally, we'll compare this distribution of the demands and the distribution of supplies as the transporting. Then basically, when we try to define this metric, we need to consider both the cost and the transporting. Okay. And this is a demo we showed in last year NIPS, and actually this is the demand and supply, the kinds of the distribution has this varied across times across the locations. And why do we care about quantify these kinds of the supply and the supply and the demand equilibrium? And this is very critical for dynamic supply demand mismatching kinds of the problems. Specifically at the time the T-1, and we can compute the supply and the demand at the T-1. And actually, based on these kinds of the mapping, and actually we can calculate and whether this is supply and demand mismatch at this time point. And at the same time, we will obtain these kinds of some macro metrics such as the completion rate at this time, T-1. And based on these results, and actually the company need to decide what kind of policy for us needed to take at this moment, and actually, and to solve these all kinds of existing the supply and demand mismatching. Okay. In that case, we start a kinds of new policy at the T, and then after we apply this kinds of new policy, then we can see the new kinds of new demands and new supplies. Then we can calculate the new supply and demand mismatching, and also we can get a new kinds of macro metrics. And actually, that's the next time points, and we decide whether we need to continue to use this policy or not, and actually, or we can need to change the policy or not. Then we can continue to run this these kinds of our platforms across different cities across time. Okay. And another thing we have been doing is called optimization dispatching. Actually, one thing, critical thing is how to optimize the company's the policies. And this is actually is optimization problems. It's a dynamic optimization problem. For instance, you have the demand, and actually the retrieve request stream in through the days, and also supplies the drivers availability in certain sense is stochastic, and also is driven by the demands. Okay, and from the platform side, we have these online dispatching and matching policies, and we wanted to optimize certain objects in order to optimize these kinds of policies. Our objective of interest include like total driver's income, as the drivers care about it. And also we care about it from the customer side, like fulfillment rate, and also response rate, and also pickup distance, okay? That's all the important factors we need to consider when we try to optimize all these different policies. We have already developed this kinds of system called the intelligence order dispatching systems, and based on the deeper reinforced learning. And I think reinforced learning have the greatest success in various games and robotics, but there is an industrial application is still at the early age. That because the reinforced learning usually requires connecting tons of the important information across the time. The gain obtained by reinforced learning must be larger than the cost of connecting such information. Okay. And this is our intelligence order dispatching systems. The most important innovation comes from the fact that from traditional kinds of order approach, based on the CAM algorithms, we formulated as a continuous optimization problems on the timeline. Okay, and our kinds of our MDP formulation for dispatching actually is we assume that every dispatching decision affects the future supply the distribution. We try to maximize driver the connective income through the optimizing dispatching. We encourage a good customer experience. And the reason we use the reinforced learning because we focus on long-term reward and over days and over longer time for the customer side, and we consider future impact of the customer decisions, and also the most important factors we use the value function is the key quantities to learn. And this is one of this our work in 2019. So VNet for dispatching. It builds on the deep Q learning and the learning plus the planning online the dispatching framework. It's intendable to incorporate contextual features like weather, dates, real-time supply and the demands, and the knowledge easily transferred to multiple tasks and the joint tasks. And then we have deployed this kinds of deep reinforced learning based kinds of the strategies in various in our platforms. And actually, some of the key kinds of the policies are active in the top 20 cities in China. We can increase our kinds of global macro metrics for 1 to 5%. Okay. And actually, we received our recent paper on ride sharing, handling the order dispatching on DD-wide reinforcement learning received the 2019 Daniels Wagon Prize Award for excellence in the practice of the advanced analytics and operation research. And also, we also posted our presentation videos at YouTube. If you are interested, you can take a look at it. And actually, in this year, we also developed a kind of user reinforcement learning to help with training kinds of our new drivers and inexperienced drivers, and also try to reposition the kinds of inexperienced drivers. And this is very important. The key idea is we wanted to kinds of learn from all these, some of the experienced drivers who can get a lot of profit at the Didi. And actually, we were basically using kinds of reinforcement-based method for doing that.
The AI assistant for drivers innovatively applies Didi's deep reinforcement learning technology to driver dispatching, while optimizing user experience and improving marketplace efficiency. It increases drivers' income by guiding them to make smart decisions. Based on deep reinforcement learning and decision theory, AI Assistant utilizes spatial temporal dynamics and deep neural networks for long-term value estimation, providing precise and effective dispatching guidance to the drivers.
CBD is now very busy. Do you want to go there? You may answer yes or no.
Yes.
Navigation starts.
AI Assistant also maximizes the chance of the driver getting matched to a trip request, reducing vacant hours. Upon arrival at the dispatching destination, the driver stands by briefly as requests are automatically matched by the platform. Xiaodi, please call the rider.
Okay, calling the rider.
When the trip is completed, the driver may disable AI Assistant or accept the next task. A break reminder would be given based on service time, billing hour, and opportunity cost. This feature improves road safety and drivers' income at the same time. AI Assistant empowers drivers on the platform to efficiently facilitate urban mobility and satisfy riders' needs. It optimizes the spatio-temporal distribution of supply and demand, enhancing service efficiency and social welfare.
And actually, we have released some data sets collected in our platform through our GAIA program. So far, there are more than 4,000 applications from the 660 plus university and the research institute across more than 30 countries. Hope that you can join us to solve many challenging problems in this topic. Thank you a lot. And also we organize this kind of applied reinforcement learning seminar series. If you're interested, you can watch attend some of these seminar series. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Very interesting presentation of the DD story, and in particular, the work that you guys have been doing in this. Now, are you working full-time now for DD, or you still have your position at North Carolina?
I have both, but in North Carolina, I'm taking a leave of absence.
Okay, yeah. For people who don't know, that we were led to Hantu from our one of our colleagues at the U of M Transportation Research Institute, who also worked at DD for a while, when he took a leave of absence. And then it sounds like you're doing the same thing, only in a different, for a different purpose, right?
Yeah, you know, and yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's stop sharing your screen so we can see you and we got a few questions for you. We don't need that. Good. So the descriptions that you're talking about for DD tend to be exclusively for driving passengers. Is delivery a bigger issue for DD? Are they moving more towards delivery, or is it more still focused on passengers?
I think both sides, because nowadays the DD is next 3 years, and we wanted to at least increase the number of the customer side, and actually they are their goals. But the problem is we needed to have enough drivers to support that. Okay, yeah. And the driving is one drivers is one kind of category of our supply side, and right. I think we work on both. And also we think about, we have the e-bike and all kinds of different new business kinds of the units, because we wanted to increase provide the different options to our customers. It's not just like the standard, the kinds of the taxi type of services. And also we will try to increase even for taxi side, we wanted to have a more closer relationship with the taxi companies, because originally we just provided some standard service to them, but now we have the more kinds of more closer relationship with the taxi companies.
And these are companies that are separate from DD?
Yeah, they are totally separate from us. Okay. It doesn't belong to us at all. We basically, the government requires, basically, we are not just compete with the taxi companies. We actually help with them in a certain way. We want the government saying this, you need to bring the new technology to these kinds of the traditional taxi business, and actually help them in a certain way. And we need to compromise with each other and basically help each other in a certain way.
Yeah, are the drivers employed by DD?
No.
They're independent?
Yeah, I think so far, I think they are independent, because most of our drivers, they prefer being independent.
Do they own their own vehicles, or do they rent vehicles from DD? Majority of people, most of the people, I think they own their own vehicles, but some people, actually the DD provides this kind of and they nowadays we have the companies to do these kinds of business, and they can list from us. Okay. Yeah. And also we provide a whole series of kinds of the services afterwards, because we help them to maintain, to keep the cost as low as possible, and that's basically can bring down the price. Okay. So that basically then that's good for the driver too. Now, when you said that you guys that you had worked with a automotive manufacturer, and you said that you called it a G1. What is a G1? No, the D1. D1. What is that? And actually, if you go to the DD's website, we just launched a new kind of vehicle called the D1 car. It's kind of the actually, we work with a vehicle company to make the car. We design the car, and actually they make it for us. Okay. And what's it's more like you know that the Google recently you can also did the same thing, right? And we something that similar to the Google side. Yeah, is there something that's unique about the vehicle?
Yes, we actually designed most of things, components, and also service panels, and also kinds of computer, kinds of controlling systems, everything.
Okay. Now, when you were talking about the data that you guys are using for your modeling, based on your experience, what's been the most important data that you've been using to do the predictions that you're doing?
No, I think this really depends on the problems we try to solve.
Yeah.
Because if we only focus on supply and the demand side,
Yeah.
and actually we need to connect to the kinds of the first one, we need a connection like a weather, this kind of information, okay? And also the policies, the government policies, okay?
Yeah.
And also and also weekends or weekdays, and also point of interest, and all of these kind of factors. And also our company side, we have different policies where may influence this kind of the supply and demand.
Right.
And we connect all kinds of informations basically, and try to sort out their causal relationship. Okay, then in order to achieve better prediction accuracy. And we also consider kinds of local, kinds of like individual levels data, and also kinds of the group level data. And then we try to combine all the information and all the environment. We all combine all the information together for prediction.
Now, when you look at all the things that you've been learning, and you've really sounds like you've learned a lot by the work that you've been doing with DD. What is the thing that surprised you the most, and that you think has been the most successful for the company?
Well, I think the most important things for me is compared with my career as a professor at UNC. What I did before is I'm mainly doing like a medical imaging analysis. I'm working in several disease areas like Alzheimer's, schizophrenia. I'm mainly working in the mental health related and Alzheimer's, these kinds of areas. I mainly use the imaging genetics things to do these kinds of predictions. And but actually, when I moved to DD, I working at two different areas. What surprising me is I find the statistics and data analysis skills are quite important. Okay, because the most important things is at the end of the day, you need to solve these problems, and really can be applied to improve the efficiency, operational efficiency for the companies. So that you need to serve both the customer side and also driver side. Okay, and that's the reason you see that the 5 research topics I have been working on. And it's quite surprising me that they are all important. I have a deep connection with the statistics. That's something I really learned. And another thing that is important for me to learn is it's not about modeling the cell. It's about you understand the business. How does the business work? And also the most important thing is how do you connect the data? Okay. And actually now I'm managing a system, a teams basically connecting data. We transfer all these the kinds of statistical features, and also we also do a lot of data minings to get it refined these kinds of features. And then actually we transfer all kinds of the data we have. We change them from unstructured data to all these structured data, and apply all different to the problem interest related company. Basically, try to organize them in a systematic way, and to make them produce the kinds of the value for the company or our customers. I think that's the things I really kind of become a manager from the beginning, how to connect the data and also apply them. And I understand the whole process. That's the most important part. I have never been done as a professor, okay? Because I never have this kind of power to do everything, every step. Because then nobody in the agency, you know, the federal government won't allow me to do all the things.
Right. Now, when you look at the competitive landscape for Didi, who are Didi's main competitors in China?
It's hard to say, because for the ride sharing, we are still is one of the best. It's top number one.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of local companies, and also Meituan is another kind of rider. They do a lot of like eating stuff, but also they try to invest into ride sharing. But we have some barriers. They cannot easily get inside.
Yeah. Now, the question that we spoke about earlier, I don't know if you heard it, was this issue of NEVs being purchased by Didi, and that there were estimates that over a period of many years, Didi has purchased a significant number of NEV vehicles. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not sure, but because one of the key reasons actually we make this kind of new vehicle called the D1 vehicle.
Yeah.
The reason we want to own this type of vehicle, and also the car was designed for us. The main reason we wanted to release these kind of cars to our drivers, so they can use it to provide the best service to our customers. Okay, we don't want to directly borrow these kinds of the most vehicles designed for the individual families. And that's the reason we want to co-invest with all these kinds of vehicle makers so that we really do the ride sharing business. We don't want to create one of the largest company on the kinds of the taxi driver companies. We need to really focus on the car sharing. This kind of otherwise this is not a high technology company. Okay, then we move back to the traditional way of the providing taxi services. Not what we want. We really want to do this kind of sharing purpose. That's our mission for doing that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So car sharing is one of the main goals of the company, other than ride sharing.
Yeah.
Very good. I think that's all the questions we have for you right now. Want to thank you for taking the time with us today. As we talked about earlier, and probably the people who are probably aware of it now, that we have this Meet the Speakers program at the end of the conference, and people have signed up to meet with the speakers for 15 minutes each for half an hour total at the end of the conference. And for those of you who are still online, there may be some openings to meet with some of the speakers. There is a link to that into the directions or the description underneath the YouTube video. So please feel free to use that as we come to start getting to the conclusion of our conference here. And we're going to go to our final speaker of the day, Chen Fu from Pony AI. He's the director of product and projects at Pony AI, and he recognized for his implementation of large-scale technological projects and engineering solutions. He's currently leading the first public robo-taxi service in California in the US. His insight on the Chinese automotive industry has made him a key player in partnerships with global OEM manufacturers that drive Pony AI's revolutionary autonomous vehicle solutions. In leveraging his experiences in China and the US, he continues to lead teams in developing the most safe and reliable autonomous vehicles that meet the challenges of modern transportation. Welcome, FC.
Hi, good morning.
We need to turn on your video.
Sure.
Here you
good
go.
morning, everyone.
All right, welcome. Do you want to share your screen and tell the story?
Sure, for sure. Give me one sec. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Cool. First of all, it's a great honor to join this conference, and thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. My name is Chen Fu. You can call me FC, since in Chinese name, it will be Fu Chen. So I'm currently leading the product and the project office at Pony.ai. So in today's sharing, I will provide some experiences that we have in our robotaxi services provided in both USA and China. And at the same time, we will share some of the future mobility services and also provide some of our observation regarding to the unique Chinese market regarding to the high technology future mobility services. Okay, for people who are not so familiar with the Pony.ai, actually we are a startup focusing on autonomous driving technology. So our target is try to provide our autonomous mobility capability everywhere with our most reliable and safest self-driving technology. At this moment, we are a company, have a global footprint. We have our R&D center. We established, actually, we are a company founded in the Silicon Valley in December 2016, South California. At the same time, we have our R&D center in Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and Shanghai. So for people who are very familiar to China, you can see that all of them are the big cities, metropolis in China. So we are still expanding our offices in multiple locations. So what we are focusing on is the autonomous technology is defined as a level 5 and the level 4 and the level 5. So when we say level 4 and the level 5 autonomous vehicle system, we are referring to the system that during the whole journey, the passengers does not need to take over the vehicle when it's running and when it's providing its services. So currently, we already deployed our vehicles equipped with our AV system in more than 6 different different vehicle platform. You can also see that we are also working on trucks. We can also make the truck working driving by itself on the highway. And from our side, even we are a startup, but we are providing the full stacks, which means that especially the software side, we provide all the software. You can see in usually for a autonomous driving system, people will think that it will be one of the ultimate challenge for the artificial intelligence technology, which is true. But at the same time, the autonomous vehicle system itself is a combination of not only the AI technology, machine learning technology, but also a lot of systematic software development, localization technology. It depends on a very important, very reliable infrastructure system, which can process huge amount of data. And at the same time, in order to make a vehicle running safely, we also need to employ a lot of knowledge regarding to the vehicle engineering, electronic engineering, and mechanical engineering. So all this coming together provide us a reliable and smart system that can drive the vehicle automatically. So at this moment, Pony is the highest valued company, AV technology company in China. So Besides, as I mentioned, we have our R&D center in Bay Area. We have been running our tests since 2017. So we have run many tests in the Fremont area, which is our headquarters. And also at the same time, we provided the very first public-facing robotaxi services in Irvine, South California. At the same time, as we are also leveraging the offices we set up in China, so that we are also providing our robotaxi service in Guangzhou, and also in Beijing. We are actively testing our vehicles, platforms with the T3 permit and our robotaxi permits. In Shanghai, we're also preparing to launch a larger scale robotaxi fleet in later this year. So from here, you can see that actually we are carrying our operation in both USA and China. So in the coming, in the next 10 minutes, I will maybe show you something about the robotaxi, because when people say, oh, we are talking about autonomous driving, how does it look on the public street? How a self-driving vehicle behave in the public street, in the normal driving scenarios? So let me share a video with you so that we can take a look into what we will look into is that how the vehicle works in USA public road. And the most interesting thing is that how the Chinese public road looks like, and how should our vehicle work in such kind of a more challenging environment. Okay, so this is one of the huge intersection we can see in Beijing. Whatever you are seeing is that our vehicle is driving by itself, and in this intersection, you can see it's pretty busy, and you can almost see everything, right? So our vehicle needs to keep a close eye with to the environment, surrounding environment, with all the sensors it has. And at the same time, it needs to do multiple calculations, make a lot of judgment in between itself and all the surrounding cyclists, pedestrians, vehicles, to make sure that our vehicle is driving like a human and also in a very safe way. So this is a very typical scenario you will see every day in Beijing. And like a human, when we are driving, sometimes we need to change the lane a lot. For a vehicle to do it, sometimes it's not an easy job. It's one of the very, very challenging job. You can see that for this case, we cancel the lane changing because there is a vehicle rushing up from behind. And at the same time, we need to protect the people, the jaywalker who is working on the side, so that we are taking care of all the objects. And this is one of the scenario that our vehicle is trying to arriving to a intersection, and it smartly choose a most suitable sweet spot for itself, so that it can move forward very smoothly. With these actions, you will see in the coming lane change and moving on, you will see that the vehicle is just behaving like a human. I think one of the vehicle on the right, the driver might be a little bit late in starting up. Raining is another very challenging scenario in our autonomous driving technology. Usually during the raining day, people will have a higher demanding for the taxi services. But how to make sure our system is working stable, working very stable in a raining day, when you don't have very clear view on the street and you have a lot of noises produced by the water. In China, especially in Guangzhou, during the summertime, it rains a lot. So that if in order to make sure our vehicle can still work in multiple climates, we spend quite a lot of time to take the challenges, and it works out pretty well. It works out pretty well. So all this, you can see that the vehicle is managing its relationship with all the other vehicles in a very proper way. Pedestrians are another challenges, especially in China. So in China, we will see many different scenarios just like this. The pedestrian is not even looking into the road, and he is actually walking on the main street. So that this is one of the beauty of our solution, that we always take care of the people on the road. We care about their safety. The kids are always full of energy. Sometimes they just forget about where they are, but our system can always find out their behaviors and take the very safe decisions to protect those lovely kids. Okay, so I think by watching this video, I think we provide you a rough idea about how it looks in China public roads. So if we come back to our slides, let me see. Yeah. Okay. So in the coming slides, I will share you some robotaxi services we have launched in US and China. Considering some of the data are a little bit sensitive in China, so before I jump into China services, I will provide you some of the data we have from the robotaxi services we provided to the public in Irvine. So in Irvine, we set up a fleet so that we are providing the robotaxi services, on-demand hailing services from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So for each vehicle, we have more than 15 rides per day. And since the launch in November 2019, we have accomplished more than 100,000 miles autonomous driving services. So based on the feedback, we can see that we have a lot of strong user engagement. Our vehicle is always on the way to pick up a pedestrian, a passenger, or on the way to sending a passenger to the destination. So many users, they are very frequent user. From that, you can see that our passenger and the users, they embrace the technology. They enjoy the services very much. And we can see the service itself is growing very fast since we launched it. So, and a lot of them, they are actually spread out. We didn't do too many marketing. Actually, there are a lot of users, they are sharing the experiences. They take videos, post it on their Twitters and the YouTubes, so that they just introduce their friends to the services, so that it grows very fast. It grows very fast. And also in beginning of this year, in March, April, unfortunately, we hit the COVID-19 pandemic. At that time, we have to pause our robotaxi services. But since our vehicle can drive everywhere, so that we leverage our fleet to provide our last mile auto delivery system. We cooperated with an e-commerce company so that we can provide Irvine area customers with 1 day deliver for all their groceries, foods they purchased online. So this is the scale that we have in our services. So overall, the service the users who use our services covers a lot. We start with the UCI, our college students. We provide them a lot of services in between their campuses and the campuses and their commute to study with their apartments. And then later on, we expand the services to a lot of people who work in the CBD center and provide them a lot of a commute in between their apartment, their offices, the offices to the shopping mall, because a lot of people take our vehicle for their lunch outside the office. So this is a very, very successful services we provided. It's not only showed that our system is mature enough to provide a public facing services. At the same time, we also collect a lot of data to understand the user pattern, and our system is keep growing up to be more adaptive, to see how to do dynamic dispatching, how to adapt to the system capacity to support our users' needs, how to improve the user experiences by improvement of the algorithm, how to improve the experiences to make them feel very comfortable and very safe when they're sitting inside a vehicle. So that a lot of feedback are coming from our passengers. They say that, yeah, it's just like a human-driven vehicle services, and it's so convenient. So based on these kind of experiences, actually, we are, excuse me, let me see, there are some hiccups. Yeah, so we also, I lost my mouse. Some problem with my, yeah, okay, so based on that services, I think I gave everyone a rough idea about how it works, because it's easier for people to understand how the taxi service is running in USA. So actually at the same time, we are providing the similar services in China. In China, we are also, when we design our serving area, we also keep in mind that we want to provide a very meaningful robotaxi services. So that when we are selecting the area, we'll select a area that includes a lot of many different meaningful destinations. From here, what you can see is that we pick up an area that include government offices, include our schools, include shopping malls, metro station. Metro station is a very important destination in China because people rely on metro quite a lot for their commute. And also a lot of shopping, dining complex, even some bus station terminal and hotels. So that we have been running this kind of services continuously for about 2 years. And we have an area covered about 200 square kilometers. We have a larger fleet in China. We are finishing, we produce in this area, we deployed more than 200 pickup and drop-off point. So pickup drop-off is a very drop-off point is a very important concept in China, because in most of the city they are pretty well designed and very strictly managed. So it usually does not allow you to drop off a passenger anywhere, considering the safety on the public roads. So that there are a lot of concepts that they will have a designated point that for you to pick up and drop off passengers to make sure that the traffic is not impacted and it's safe for both the vehicle, the passenger, and all the vehicles surrounding. So this is a very typical dense urban area, which is also another challenging to the technology of our robotaxi vehicles. So since this forum is talking about the China automotive, so that based on our operation and service experiences we had in both USA and China, we'd like to share some of the insights about the future of the smart mobility in China, just for everyone's reference. So first of all, what we can see is that in China, the transportation infrastructure is developed in a very fast pace. So you can see that the electronic vehicle, the market share is picking up. You see many vendors, they are providing pure EV in China, and the customer, they like this kind of model very much. We have a lot of facilities improved. The facilities including the road, public road, the traffic lights, all the protective facilities, smart crosswalk. So the China city and the government, the officers in the city and the government, they do a lot of future-proof planning to improve the infrastructure and the facilities in the public transportation. So this is one of the trends, and China is really good at that part, especially that you can see a lot in those well-developed metropolis and the big cities. On the other hand, I think since we are talking about a lot of new technology, so the attitude from the government towards the new technology is super important. We are very glad to see that we have very supportive government from China, from multiple regions, different cities, so that they are proactively making the policies and the regulations, which is helping to facilitate all the new technology tests and the deployment in different areas. So we can see that they are very determined to move towards a smart transportation, and that they are trying to make the law, the regulation more mature, so that all the technology services can be developed and deployed in a very well-defined framework. So, and also when we talk about the future mobility, definitely the user of China will be a very important group that we need to work with. Actually, what we can see that for the Chinese users, they are very open to the new technology. In the past 10 years, many high-tech technology and internet services, they are all launched successfully and well used in China. Most of them become the largest market in the world. So we can also see from our services provided to the public, we can also see that the people are very open to the new technology, and that they are so excited for those autonomous driving services, so that we can see in the future more and more people get used to this technology, and that they will take more of the services as just what they are having nowadays, provided by the human driver. So of course, at the same time, we also believe that with our algorithm, with our high efficiency dispatching system, the autonomous driving itself can yield very high efficiency in energy and reduce a lot of carbon emission, because we can have the optimized routing planning. We can maximize the ride sharing by our algorithm, and we can minimize the wandering time for a vehicle in the street. So, and also at the same time, the electronic vehicle and autonomous technology, they complement to each other. Most of our solution, they works perfectly on a pure electronic vehicle. Considering we have sensors, we have computation systems that they all require electricity power, so that this is a perfect combination. The technology and the EV trend, they merge, and they work together perfectly for the future. Yeah, I think that is a sum of our experiences we had in both US, China regarding to the autonomous driving technology, the robotaxi services that we can share with all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, FC. Very nice description and story about what you've been doing at Pony. Got some good questions for you.
Sure.
The first one has to do with your technology stack. What in your view makes your technology stack unique?
So I think for Pony.ai, we designed the system from very bottom line, so that we even designed the system by ourselves. Instead of employ a mature robotic operating system or some other system, we built it from scratch. So that based on the understanding of the infrastructure and the in-house built system, we can maximize the system's performance and the reliability. We have a lot of room that we can under our own control, which can help us to push the system to the maximum performance and make the system super reliable in many different situations.
Are you using your own sensors and cameras, radar, LiDAR, or are you buying those from suppliers?
Yeah, we use a combination. We have in-house sensors built up by ourselves, and at the same time, we are also leveraging the sensor industry, and we always use the most advanced and reliable system from the market. So we put them together and integrate them seamlessly to provide an end-to-end solution.
Are the suppliers Chinese, US, European, combination of all those?
It's a combination of everywhere. It's a combination of everywhere because many different vendors, they have their own unique competence and technology advantages, so that we are taking, as I said, we carefully pick the vendor of the sensor, and they are coming from everywhere.
Okay. We're pretty familiar with the autonomous vehicle story in the US, not so much about China. Who are your competitors in China?
Well, in China, we have multiple competitors. If we categorize them, some of them, they are internet companies like Alibaba and Meituan. Some of them, they work on the taxi services and ride-sharing services like Didi. Like Dida, they are also working on that. And also we in China, there are some other startups who works on autonomous driving technology, like WeRide, AutoX. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a variety of, sounds like small players and big players, a combination of.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, in the U.S., one of the things that they talk about when they talk about autonomous vehicles, they also talk about connected vehicles as a combination piece.
Yes.
So that you can see a little farther down the road than your sensors can do, right? Are you incorporating the? I know in the U.S. we really don't have the infrastructure set up to do as much of that as needs to be done. Is it any different in China?
Yes, I think this is exactly echo to the very first point I mentioned, the infrastructure of the transportation. In the Chinese government, they tried very hard to move towards this direction. When we talk about the connected vehicles, we always talk about a V2X, right? A vehicle to vehicle to a lot of other things. So in China, there are many cities, they are trying to establish such kind of infrastructure. There are a lot of pilot projects launched by different cities, locations. I believe from that perspective, the smart infrastructure, the advanced transportation system in China, they will be deployed sooner and quicker.
Okay, very good. I'm assuming, well, in the US, you still need to have a safety driver in your testing. Is that true for China as well?
I think whether you have a safety driver, it rely on two main factors. One is how mature your technology is. Do you feel it's safe to have the vehicle running on the public street? But on the other hand, there are also regulation. Both USA and the China government, they have very strict regulation because they need to, in US, it's a DMV. who will review all your application to see if you want to take out the driver, you will go through a application permit review. In China, it's a similar, but the unique thing is that in China, the regulation is done by local government. So from that perspective, you will see that in some of the city, the government open for a driverless test permit.
Okay.
Some of the city, they will say, we will keep that for a while, and we will open to maybe next year. So you will see different progresses, different regulations in China, because it's not a unified rule. Some of the city, they are very open, supportive to the new technology. So they will take more open-minded and provide more convenience and trust the technology more. Some of the city, they will choose a very conservative way, but they want to make sure all your tests are carried out carefully with safety.
Very good. Now, coming from Michigan, as I am, we deal with an issue that you have not really seen very much of, and that's snow. And have you been doing any testing in any snow areas?
Yes, actually we did. As our vehicle is supposed to be running global-wise, so that different climates are one of the challenges we are talking about. So, for example, when we are having our test in Beijing, Beijing is on north of in North China, so that they snowed a lot. So yeah, snow, windy, heavy rain, they are all kind of challenges that we are dealing with in our whole system development.
Right. So much of the technology relies on being able to see the lines on the road and have these markers to keep your vehicle in a lane and in a safe, driving in a safe way. What kind of how are your algorithms managing that complex situation where you really may not be able to see everything on the road itself that you like?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Actually, every time people ask that question, I will be very happy to show the beauty of the autonomous driving technology, because when we talk about autonomous driving technology, we are using multiple sensors. Different sensors, they have different performance, and they are complementary to each other. When we say, if we compare to human, usually we only use our eyes and ears to observe the surroundings. And sometimes, like me, I don't have very good eyesight. But for our vehicle, they are very stable because they have multiple sensors. They can see hundreds of meters away. And some of them work perfectly. Even you have a very heavy rain, some of the laser sensor, they can see through. And in the very dark environment, our system is not a problem. Some of the camera, they can still see very clear in very dark environment. Yeah. And at the same time, our technology will combine all the different data from multiple sources, which means that we always utilize all the data from each sensor, which can maximize the information we can obtain from the road, which provide a more informative input for the vehicle to make judgment.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now, we have one of our colleagues here, Hung Tu, working with Didi, and he has his robo-taxi. Do you have a robo-taxi fleet as well? Hung Tu? Do you have a robo-taxi fleet as well?
Robo-taxi fleet?
Yeah. Do you have an autonomous vehicle program?
Yes, we do.
You do?
Yeah.
And do you have vehicles being tested right now?
Yes, we have. We have both in China and also in US.
It sounds like the dispatching program, the program that you have been working on, that is so much more advanced. There might be some linkages that you might want to talk to FC about, or FC should want to talk to you about.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, sure.
Because we are, he's more technical side. I'm more working on this kind of customer side.
Right, right.
And then actually, we have the autonomous driving branch unit. Basically, we do all the similar things, but it's a different. We connect more in the different angles, and also because we are kinds of ride-sharing company, we have to connect to the data related to our kinds of business.
Right, right, exactly. Let's see. Here's a comment from somebody for UFC. Can you comment on the integration of other transportation systems, buses, trams, local train services?
Okay, so yeah, I think the question is if we are capable to turn the traditional transportation system into a smart system. Is that
Right.
a question?
Right. Yeah, for intermodal transportation systems, right?
Sure. I think first of all, the transportation system itself is a system. When we say it's a system, we need to collect them all together. As I mentioned in my previous slides, for example, in China, connected to a metro station is very important because for some of the long distance transportation, the metro system will give you faster transportation method. But in the last mile, when they get out of the metro, they need to go to a destination. Then the taxi services, robo-taxi services, is a very good complement services. Mm-hmm. At the same time, if we are talking about can we make a bus drive by itself automatically? Actually, the answer is definitely yes. Technically, to turn a bus into an auto driving system is way easier comparing to turning a normal vehicle into a robo-taxi services, because a bus usually have a low speed and the bus usually goes to the fixed routes. So all the scenarios is very predictable. So technically, yes, I think in the future, since we are now working on the sedan, the SUV, we're also working on truck. I think all the technically the solution is applicable to multiple vehicle platforms, including bus.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I want to thank you for taking the time today to give us an insight onto your company. Congratulations on your relationship with Toyota and FAW that just got announced recently.
Thank you very much.
Nice new funding sources.
Yeah. Yes.
Hung Tu, I want to thank you for sharing your insights about DD. I think you provided some great information about the work that you're doing and how it's going to apply to the DD platform. Shanjun, I want to thank you again for participating today about giving your insights on your research on kind of applied economics. It was a very interesting talk, and I think that I think our audience really learned a lot today in terms of what's going on within China for the specific areas that you guys are focusing on. I think that's going to be it for today. Our next conference is going to be on February 24th. It has the title of Never Let an Issue. How does it go? Never let well, in this case, a pandemic, never let a crisis go to waste. So what are some of the things that you can do in a crisis situation? And in this case, we're looking at new mobility and how new mobility will be affected by the pandemic, and what kinds of things are getting slowed down and what kinds of things are actually speeding up because of the pandemic in terms of new mobility. And automated vehicles and ride sharing are all part of that story as well. So we'll be interested to hear from our next set of speakers in February about this topic. So again, thank you all very much, and we'll see you in February. Take care.